Well, let's get you more on this. I'm joined here in the studio by International Affairs Editor Armen Georgian. Armen, it's clear, we listened to Antony Blinken there. The relations between the US and China are increasingly strained.
Well, this Chinese decision to suspend cooperation in some key areas is actually a big shift. Up until now, China had taken what it thought was a pragmatic approach, that even though there were major areas of disagreement with the US, human rights, intellectual property, things like that, nonetheless, the areas that they could work together, for example, climate change, they would do so. The fact that China has made this decision to suspend cooperation in key areas, it shows that it is no longer willing to keep the door open on certain kinds of cooperation. And this visit by Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan has, in a sense, convinced or at least confirmed to Beijing that the US is absolutely determined to suppress China in what China considers to be its own backyard. Obviously, Taiwan doesn't see things that way. But, for years, Chinese officials have said what they want is coexistence and cooperation. Of course, China's critics would say, well, the actions didn't support that, but certainly the official line was that China wanted some kind of harmonious coexistence, and that now they see that the US is determined to go down a path of confrontation. And so China's kind of switching now and saying, well, if that's what the US wants, then we will respond to that. But I think for China to suspend this cooperation, it also, Rochelle, speaks to a level of confidence, that Beijing really has grown very confident in its own economic model, its own model of governance, its own approach to global politics. Xi Jinping said at a key meeting last year that he thought time and momentum are on China's side. So they have this sense of confidence that if the US has, from Beijing's point of view, chosen a path of confrontation instead of consensus, then China is ready to take on that challenge in a long-term way.
We're seeing these, continued military drills. China says, look, we're ultimately just, checking out our troops and, how they can work together. But, where can things go from here? Because these frosty relations are, a U-turn, if you will. Things seem to be okay on the surface. This visit has come and, things have gone haywire, essentially.
Well, if we take these it's quite significant, actually, that the bilateral points where China has said it's not going to work with the US anymore. They've talked about three areas: military-to-military cooperation, climate change, and counter-narcotics. There was a time when China made some moves on counter-narcotics in the light of the US opioid epidemic in 2018 to 2019. China moved to regulate certain kinds of fentanyl and its analogs as a result of US lobbying. I think it's fair to say that, though, over time, China's cooperation with the US on counter-drugs policy sort of waned a little bit as the overall relationship deteriorated. And we can see a similar dynamic, actually, if we're honest, in the military-to-military sphere as well. In the past, the US and Chinese militaries, they had more of an emphasis on deconfliction, on transparency, on preventing some sort of misunderstanding leading to a major confrontation between two nuclear-armed powers. As the overall relationship deteriorated, they focused more on things like disaster relief, humanitarian things, where the militaries of both countries could be involved. So I think we'd already seen a kind of steady erosion of those areas of cooperation, frankly. But one area where I think the suspension of cooperation is very significant is on climate change, because you will remember at the big international summit in Glasgow, there was an agreement that was unveiled between the US and China to reduce methane emissions, protecting forests, phasing out coal, and the fact that this agreement was struck between the two of the world's two largest emitters of carbon dioxide. That was hailed as something of a breakthrough in the context of the COP26 in Glasgow. That is now presumably on hold, and that, I would argue, is probably quite a significant setback to the global climate agenda.
As you say, another major setback in US-China relations. For now, our international affairs editor, Armen Georgian. Thank you.